Hello to all attendees of this year's Thomson Reuters Synergy Conference. We're pleased to have you on our presentation today. My name is Joe Havac, and thank you for watching our Kinetic Tax Data Approach presentation on harnessing the power of data in motion by owning and managing your tax data. Just a little bit about me before introducing our other presenters today. My name is Joe Havac. I am a Managing Director in KPMG's National Tax Technology practice. I have over 15 years of experience in designing and implementing tax process and data management improvement for global tax departments, with the goal of creating efficiencies and also helping to save costs. I am also KPMG's leader for ONESOURCE Workflow Manager and DataFlow. Pleasure to be here. Now to introduce our very valued presenters, Greg Jurgen, Chuck Kamen, and Claire Crossman. Greg, on to you.
All right, thank you, Joe. So I worked for Thomson Reuters for 10 years, where I consulted with hundreds of clients, both on the corporate and the professional tax side. This is probably my 10th Synergy to attend. Prior to Thomson Reuters, I spent years consulting with Fortune 500 customers related to business development and improving customer retention. I am presently a senior manager with KPMG, where I've been for 5 years. The products we will be discussing today are products I've worked with and implemented for about 15 years now. I'm happy to report that several of our customers have been Taxologist winners in the past. I'm pleased to be here presenting to you today. Chuck?
Thanks, Greg. Hello, everyone. My name is Chuck Kamen. I am a senior manager in KPMG's Tax Ignition practice, and I specialize in ONESOURCE implementations, primarily DataFlow implementations. I've been with KPMG for about 4 years now, and prior to joining the firm, I was a DataFlow implementer with Thomson Reuters for about 3 years. Prior to my time at Thomson Reuters, I spent over 20 years as a corporate tax professional in both public and private, where I was a user of many ONESOURCE products. And I'm happy to be here today. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Claire Crossman, and I am still currently at Thomson Reuters. I'm a director in the product management group, and I focus currently on the ONESOURCE platform area on the data strategy. I've had some other roles at Thomson Reuters in the professional services and also in product management around ONESOURCE tax provision and uncertain tax positions. Prior to joining with Thomson Reuters, I worked in both public and private for around 17 years, mostly focused on tax accounting. And glad to be here with you all today.
Okay, thank you, Claire. It's a pleasure to be presenting with you today. All right, so on to some housekeeping items real quick. This session has been pre-recorded. However, a subject matter expert is participating in the session live to answer your questions using the Q&A panel. So as you have questions throughout today's session, feel free to ask them. To verify your attendance and qualify you for CPE credit, please ensure you acknowledge all attendance pop-up alerts. Be sure to complete the session survey after attending this session to provide us with valuable feedback. CPE credits for attending this session live will be added to your Synergy CPE certificate that will be emailed to you following the conference. Please direct any CPE questions to the virtual Synergy information desk. Note, if you are watching this recording post Synergy, this session will not qualify for CPE credit. Okay, on to our objectives. Pretty straightforward. One, identify how to practice owning and managing your own tax data. The other, understand the technology, infrastructure, and tools needed to have in place to own and manage this data. And then appreciate the benefits of owning and managing your own tax data. And for that, Joe, I think we're now over to you.
Thank you, Greg. So let's start with common tax data issues. So in KPMG's experience, the most common pain points that we hear from our clients around data are as follows. One, source data is in multiple ERP systems or not in any systems at all, or is a combination of the two. Now, this is obviously going to complicate a data collection because the data is not all in one place. Two, which is probably an outcome of one, is that data collection is time consuming and highly manual. It's also timely to transform and to review in order to get the data that tax needs, or basically to get down to the tax sensitized data. Three, non-standardized and unaligned tax processes make it difficult to get the data that is needed by various parts of the tax department. Four is that there is no central repository to store that tax data once it's been collected. Now, this one in particular causes a lot of repetitive data collection and a lot of duplication of efforts, so it creates inefficiencies. And five, there is a lack of robust technology that is being used for data collection, management, and integration with various systems. And this is primarily due to a heavy reliance on pure Excel. And as we know, pure Excel does have certain limitations and risks due to a lack of controls with using the tool. Next slide, Greg.
Okay.
So to help solve these data challenges, KPMG has found that an optimal tax department process is built by using what we refer to as a kinetic tax data approach. So what does kinetic mean? Kinetic means data that is in motion, that is gathering momentum and value as it travels across the tax life cycle. So if we look at this pendulum analogy, if we start at the left, we see that we have static data or data that is not yet in motion. Now, a well-designed tax process, and in this example, we're using a direct tax process, but a well-designed global provision process will be able to capture all of the data that is needed to then feed the global compliance and RTP process data needs, along with tax reform. That then feeds an enhanced data process for tax planning, forecasting, and audit and controversy. That in turn feeds enhanced data for reporting, analytics, and data visualization. So the pendulum then swings from static to data not in motion to kinetic, where data is in motion and we're getting the most value out of it. So in order to achieve this kinetic data solution, what do we need to have in place? Well, at the bottom of the slide, you'll see several optimal requirements for this type of process. So obviously, a central or a global tax data repository. Secondly, standardized and globally aligned processes. 3, integrated and automated data across the end-to-end tax lifecycle. And 4, a tax technology strategy and roadmap to help us get there. And we all realize that you can't get there overnight. It's part of a planned, phased implementation. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, and that brings us to our first polling question. What is the meaning of kinetic tax data? And the answer is data in motion that gathers momentum and value as it travels across the tax lifecycle.
Thank you, Chuck. So if we look at the kinetic data approach from a technological view, how do we achieve the kinetic tax data approach? Well, it involves reviewing a tax department's current state architecture, their various technologies, their pain points, and their objectives and requirements, and then designing a more holistic future state solution that enhances the end-to-end tax department's performance by connecting all of their tax data sources, all of their processes, and all of their people into a globally aligned, centralized, standardized, automated, and integrated platform. Now, you can see by this architecture diagram that in the center, the core is the global tax data repository. So our upstream systems or our finance and data source systems feed data into the data repository through primarily automated approaches. That data is then leveraged as a single source of truth for all of your tax data. And this then allows the data to be collected once and then automated and integrated across the remaining tax lifecycle, across the remaining tax systems, and across remaining tax processes. And that's both with internal users of data and external users of data. Now, while there are various technologies involved here, the core of the solution is the repository. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, now I just wanted to talk about the importance of quality source data. The importance of quality source data is one of the biggest challenges our clients face, and it was certainly one of the biggest challenges I faced when I was. How much time does your department spend acquiring source data, and how much time does your department spend transforming the data once you receive it? This is often one of the most time-consuming and riskiest parts of the overall tax life cycle. As tax professionals, I'm sure many of you have experienced, we're often the last department to be considered in the financial/ERP source system architecture design in order to achieve tax-driven chart of accounts, for example, tax-defined data recording and reporting requirements, data available at the legal entity level. This is often very challenging to receive from finance. Fixed assets and depreciation data, US GAAP and local currencies, as well as transfer pricing data requirements. Now, the problem is finance transformations can be quite expensive and complex. And I think we're finding these days that tax departments really benefit from having their own central tax data warehouse. This really lends itself to the overall kinetic tax data approach.
Thank you, Chuck. So carrying on from what Chuck just described, so what are your options for a tax data repository in your tax department? Well, there's three main approaches that can be used. The first one is to internally custom build a tax data repository or warehouse. And that can be an extension of your current finance software, or it can be a complete custom build with the ongoing support and maintenance of your IT department. Now, such a tax data repository can become quite expensive, and the implementation can take anywhere from 9, but more likely closer to about 18 months. The second option is to license software for a tax data repository. So this can be pre-built, third-party, most likely web-hosted software that can also provide you a data collection and management solution in addition to a tax data warehouse. Now, such a licensed solution would be owned and controlled by the tax department and would need little to no IT support or maintenance. So two great examples of this type of approach are ONESOURCE DataFlow and the ONESOURCE DataHub, which is a new solution from Thomson Reuters, both of which we will discuss in today's presentation. Now, a licensed software approach will likely be a little bit more cost effective and will have a shorter implementation time than a custom build, closer to 3 to 12 months, depending on the scope of what is being performed. Now, finally, a third option is that as part of a or outsourcing solution with an external provider for your compliance and or provision services, the provider will most likely have a repository as part of their technology solution. Now, while this can house some or all of your tax data, keep in mind that this would be owned and controlled by the service provider. Now, depending on the scope of the or the outsourcing, this could become quite expensive as well, and the implementation time could be around 3 to 12 months, again, depending on scope. Thank you, Greg.
Okay.
And that brings us to our second polling question. What are the 3 options for a tax data repository? Okay, and the answer to what are the 3 options for a tax data repository is custom build, licensed software, or co-source/outsource.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. All right, so let's talk about ONESOURCE Workflow Manager and the differing modules that make up that application. Workflow Manager is a proven tool which helps tax departments track the progression of work, manage filing requirements, retain and work with documents, and allow you to archive and retain these documents per any kind of company retention policies. Let's walk through them now individually. So first, building on the file room. This is where it all begins, in the drawer. The drawer has defined naming requirements to ensure incoming documents can be readily located later to work with, maybe edit them, maybe just to view them. And these documents are going to be protected and follow differing retention policies based on the metadata assigned to them when they're brought into the application. Second, the Workflow Manager element. So this module is the glue that holds it all together. It provides you a binder view. It's where everything relative to a tax process is readily available. It's where processes are standardized. Users can track progression of work. They can provide sign-offs on differing tasks. They can send out notifications and reminders. and they can even subscribe to differing reports to get them delivered into their own mailbox. They can get those sent to them via Excel or PDF. And of course, when we talk about a standardized workflow, we recommend setting up a defined process that follows the 80-20 rule. There's always going to be exceptions. And that is the beauty of this module, where it permits dynamic tasks to be added on the fly as needed for that 20% where the norm is just not possible. Third, let's talk about the platform and the reporting. So one of the great things about Workflow Manager is the out-of-the-box reports users can generate, subscribe to, and custom filter against, so they can monitor what really matters most to them. The reports can be found inside the ONESOURCE Workflow Manager module, as well as on the platform, where users can configure dashboards like Pages and the Gadgets, so that they can quickly monitor differing processes. Again, that which matters most to them. And the reporting is available for more than just workflow. There are document alerts and notifications that users can define, as well as differing calendar reports for tracking all your filing needs. So fourth is Calendar. Calendar provides a single location to manage your global filing requirements and deadlines. To me, the greatest part of this module is that the due dates and the tax updates are maintained through your Thomson Reuters subscription for the regions that matter to you. Plus, there is a highly configurable reporting module associated with Calendar, as well as gadgets on the platform, and customers can implement custom events. So for those one-off filing needs that you have in a sparse jurisdiction or such, you can define that custom event and deploy it inside of the Calendar module, allowing you to have all of your filing requirements tracked inside of Calendar. And then the fifth, last but not least, is DataFlow. I'm not going to spend too much time going into detail on DataFlow because Chuck has a couple of slides coming up where he's going to dive us deeper into DataFlow. However, I will say that this module is powerful due to the centralized repository. So we heard Joe speak of earlier the need for having that centralized repository. And this brings it into your data management processes. DataFlow brings so much needed control to any of your data collection processes. Plus, with its capacity to bulk import mass amounts of data, for example, like your trial balances, and its integration with your downstream systems like ONESOURCE tax provision and ONESOURCE income tax via the Excel add-in and the work papers add-in, this tool increases efficiency, it lowers risk, and when combined with the modules of ONESOURCE Workflow Manager, it brings your tax department closer to having an audit-ready process in place. So I'll hand it over to Chuck now, who will walk us through DataFlow in greater depth.
Thanks, Craig. Yeah, so I wanted to give a sort of a high-level overview of what ONESOURCE DataFlow is and the benefits it brings to a overall tax process. So DataFlow is an Excel-based data collection tool. For those tax departments that are currently utilizing Excel-based data collection workbooks or tax packages, DataFlow is a great alternative to eliminate many of the inefficiencies you find in the traditional tax package method of collecting data. Again, DataFlow is Excel-based, but unlike traditional Excel-based tax packages, it offers a centralized, standardized, cloud-based solution that makes it easy users track the completion status of each of your tax packages, view and edit history, create user groups, and it provides the ability to attach documents. In addition, while DataFlow utilizes standard Excel workbooks as templates, the data that's entered into the tax packages is saved into a cloud-based database, which can then be retrieved into other DataFlow packages or can be retrieved into outside Excel files. So you can build custom reports that extract the data you're collecting in your DataFlow packages. DataFlow also has a rollover feature. So how many hours does your department currently spend just rolling over your tax packages year to year or quarter to quarter? DataFlow can actually do this automatically, and we find this to be one of the bigger time savings found with DataFlow. And lastly, DataFlow is a template-based system. In other words, one Excel file is used as the template for all of your tax packages. Even though each entity's tax package is unique and contains data unique to it, the Excel file that it's utilizing under the hood is a single template common to all of your tax packages. This allows you to make changes in just one place and have it apply to all of your tax packages, even after the tax packages have been deployed and are live. So for example, if you make a change to your template, your data providers will see the changes the next time they open their tax package. Another great feature of DataFlow is that it has direct integration with General Ledger Manager, which means we're able to pull trial balance data directly into DataFlow packages from GLM. DataFlow is also compatible with ONESOURCE Excel add-in and workpapers, so we're able to push data directly into ONESOURCE products such as ONESOURCE Tax Provision and ONESOURCE Income Tax directly from DataFlow. Next slide, please.
Okay.
All right, so this is sort of just a high-level slide showing the conversion process and the overall DataFlow lifecycle. So we would start off with an implementation, and one of the things that it includes is converting possibly your existing Excel workbooks to a DataFlow usable workbook or a template. And that's probably the simplest method. We've also created Excel templates from scratch, and then everything in between. So once the implementation process is completed and we go live and do our first deployment, your data providers would then enter data into their DataFlow packages. That data then being saved directly into the DataFlow database or DataFlow repository. That data then is usable across other DataFlow packages, or we can also extract that data, like I said, into outside files or reports or what have you. And then, of course, we can use that data to either send it to other ONESOURCE applications. We can include it in an Alteryx workflow, or what have you. So just a ton of useful. Just makes DataFlow a very powerful application.
Okay.
All right, great. So Joe, Chuck, and Greg, you've all done a great job setting the stage for me. It's clear data management is a large component of everyone's tax department, and the overall process and managing that data may take valuable time away from being able to actually use that data and use that data in one or more processes. So what I'm going to discuss now is our evolving data strategy and how we also support this idea of kinetic data approach. The DataHub offering is one of those licensed capabilities that was mentioned earlier, and it's part of the ONESOURCE platform. It's a component of the overarching data strategy, and it exists and it coexists with our other existing data-focused solutions. So it's not in competition. It enhances and works with those. The ONESOURCE data strategy is really focused on providing enough structure inside ONESOURCE while still enabling enough flexibility to allow you to utilize the functionality how it best meets your needs. It is global, it's deployed globally, it's cloud enabled, and it's API accessible. So if you think about the API side of things, we built it API first, and each of its components are actually like Lego building blocks. So sometimes we say you can make a little square box out of these Legos, or you can create the Death Star, up to you. The DataHub provides that broker or middleman capability as far as data in the ONESOURCE platform to enable the centralization of data with 5 key areas of capability: ingestion, classification, validation, storage, and access. So if you think about it, we want to be able to support that whole left to right kind of view of data. So ingestion is the point of entry. Classifying is allowing you to tell us as much as or as little about the data to give it identity and also definition. Validation is where we can do certain things to make sure that, let's say, that the entity exists or the account is in a chart of accounts, or things like it is a number or it is a date. So we can do a lot of different validations for you as you design those. And then storing the data for either quick access, whether it's through one of our tools or a third party, or also long-term storage when you're trying to support the life cycle of data for things like audits, open audits, and that type of thing. And then the last one is access. So being able to leverage that across your entire ecosystem. So not just within the ONESOURCE boundaries, but across everything. So when we look at some of the classic inbound data, it comes from things like ERPs and GL and other supporting subsystems. But it also comes from data providers using things like Excel or ONESOURCE tools such as DataFlow. Inbound data formats can vary and can change without warning over time, making it difficult to work with. And often inserting a time-consuming step in the process where you have to react, and you often have to do things manually, which can create errors and can also upset your entire workflow. When the data is provided to you, in most cases, it was not likely designed for you. And which is something that we've always known for tax people. They have to use data that's given to them, which is why we're focusing on providing capabilities around transformation and converting the data so that you can work with what you've been given to make it become useful and valuable. DataHub's design is based on allowing you to define what data is included in what you've been given and how much validation, classification, and how much of that data should move through the sort of the pipeline. So don't take anything away from your data, bring it all in, and then tell us what you'd like to keep. And we want to be able to do that in stages. So when the data originally arrives, bring it in as it was given to you, keep it, and it'll be unchangeable, and then start to process it, removing some of those black box feelings. You'll understand how each stage of the data, something happened, whether it was converting it or transforming it. The DataHub design also includes functionality to address large data. So as the world gets bigger and more data comes faster, we have also focused on being able to accept that data and remove any size or volume restrictions to ensure that even the largest data sets can be brought in and utilized efficiently. In addition to data coming in from outside ONESOURCE, we also want to unlock the valuable data that's stored inside ONESOURCE, so it can be accessible and enable use and reuse for other processes. The natural progression of data throughout the tax year and through the Kinetic data lifecycle is supported in the DataHub and provides a broker or middleman again that assists in areas such as reconciliation, true-up, and other activities as well. Allowing the data to be accessible to consumers inside and outside of ONESOURCE is also a key part of our strategy. And we want to enable that data to be available to third-party tools. In several cases, we're working on partnerships to provide direct connections through things like our Alteryx ONESOURCE connector. And the DataHub has both the ONESOURCE download connector, being able to pull data into Alteryx from ONESOURCE DataHub, as well as the ONESOURCE upload connector, which allows you to take data that you maybe from a process have gone through Alteryx, transformed it, and load it back into ONESOURCE. So DataHub can kind of be on either end of that process. And DataHub capabilities can add strength to ONESOURCE by enabling repeatable processing around data. And this can help in things where it's RPA or bot technology. We can create machine-to-machine relationships with the data. Specifically, when you look at something like DataFlow and DataHub, we think there's a natural complementary relationship between the two. In next-gen DataFlow, their focus really can remain on the data collection and enabling that work paper look and feel and helping your users help get the data in and in a useful manner. And then DataFlow will be able to leverage the capabilities in DataHub to both efficiently store data that's being collected through DataFlow, as well as being able to access any data that's stored in DataHub. So in the example, we said that today's DataFlow is connected to something like General Ledger Manager. Imagine being able to grab any piece of data that you've uploaded into the DataHub, back into a DataFlow and making it part of a different DataFlow collection. So part of the data strategy that's not explicitly shown on this slide is around the administration of data foundational elements. And these types of things are things that anchor the business and financial data. So I agree with Chuck when he mentioned about the quality of data and the transformation of data. And examples of these foundational elements sometimes referred to also as master data, is what we have built around our centralized functionality administration to track and understand entities and charts of accounts across ONESOURCE. We're continuing to advance that those areas as well. We've also introduced reference data, which addresses more of the commonly known facts about things like currency, geography, and financial hierarchy, or even a purpose. These are things that Thomson Reuters curates and enables to provide more capabilities to have an understanding of common principles. These things are also used to help us move data throughout our different applications and tools. So if you tell us that the data is for the purpose of a country, we can also then help move that data to the specific country. If you've told us that it is all types of revenue and expense, we can aggregate those and potentially come up with things like net income or ultimately taxable income. So things like that help us with the reference data. So stepping back a little bit, although my background is purely tax, I've grown to really appreciate the advancements and technologies that are enabling the ONESOURCE data strategy to be able to achieve some of the points that I've just made. When we began developing the functionality, I brought my traditional understanding of how tax had to work with data and how we had to do certain things in the past, and I sort of passed on your points of pain. And I was pleasantly surprised to see how much has changed in such a short period of time to be able to address those in a much more fluid, much more usable way. I'm sometimes asked if DataHub is a lake, warehouse, or a mart. And it's interesting because we actually are able to employ all three of those approaches. So data lake technologies enable ONESOURCE data to be able to accept large volumes of data without requiring any specific understanding of that data. So we're able to take anything and be able to store it in a very unopinionated way. That may not be valuable until you start doing things on top of that data, but we can do it. When we then think about data warehousing approaches, this is where ONESOURCE enables you to start to add commonly understood principles about the data, to start to apply validations and different types of overarching purposes of that data. So that starts to hone the data and make it more sensible and useful, but it doesn't necessarily define it for a single purpose yet. That's really where the data mart comes in. And that's where the approach is very specific to a very specific type of data. So if you think of something about like trial balance data, that might be a very specific set of data. You could also think of other types of data like intercompany transactions or other pieces of data like specifically sales or things that support allocation and apportionment. Those would be more like a mart, and you could tell us those kinds of things. So I guess said differently, as a technology company, we don't have to pick one of those strategies specifically. We can leverage all of them, and we can apply them or help you apply them in a way that both supports what you want to do and best how you can do it. And I guess ultimately what it really does is enables that kinetic data processing.
Okay.
Thank you, Claire. So after the discussion on the Kinetic Tax Data Approach, what are some potential qualitative benefits of this approach? So obviously the first one, as we've already mentioned, is it does create for you a single source of truth for all of your tax data in a standardized and central platform. But there are several other benefits here. If we look at the left-hand side first, it's going to create efficiencies in your tax department through the use of automation around your data. So efficiencies will free up your tax department's resources to do more value-added work than just pure data collection, such as data review and data analysis. So that's going to empower tax in the organization. As we go further down the left-hand side, better data means improved accuracy and transparency of your global tax data and its processes. Stronger controls through better automation and less use of manual Excel processes, which will also result in reduced risk and no more duplication of efforts. So all of this will create a more streamlined and audit-ready process. If we look at the right-hand side, because of your data being stored in a central platform, in a central repository, you will be more easily able to leverage that data for tax planning and forecasting needs. And that's going to make tax a more collaborative and strategic player in the organization, able to more quickly respond to questions and to help your business units and entities with predictive decision making. The repository acts as a central and complete source of data that can be leveraged for analytics and data visualization. Okay, much more so than under current processes. And finally, by being in control of all of your data, it will provide the organization with the power, excuse me, and the fluidity to shift between different service delivery models, from an outsourced or a co-sourced solution to an in-house solution, or to a shared service center model, whether that's regionally or globally. Because of the fact that you own and control your data, you're able to plug and unplug and play with the data source and who needs that data. This will keep external service providers on their toes, as we say, and will help to keep them more competitive with their services and their prices. Thank you, Greg.
Okay, so what are the potential quantitative benefits of Kinetic Tax Data Approach? Based on our experience at KPMG, we've witnessed our clients save approximately 50% of internal time cost related to overall tax data collection management transformation. I mean, that's just a huge number. And and we see that once our clients are receiving quality data, we implement solutions to transform that data efficiently, and getting consistent data. Right. Often, before solution, our clients are receiving just data that's just all across the board from the field. Right. And our solutions provide a consistent form of data, and those things, we're seeing huge savings in that area. They're saving approximately 25 to 35% of time and fees paid to external service providers for tax compliance services. For example, prior to a DataFlow implementation, our clients might be sending an Excel file or Excel tax package where their compliance service provider is then taking that data and manually entering into a tax compliance system. We see many of our clients now, they're able to build an import file for their service provider. They're just saving huge amounts of time being spent by their service providers on this. And then finally, reduce end-to-end tax compliance and provision cycle times by approximately 25 to 50%. And that finally brings us to our third polling question. What are some of the benefits of the Kinetic Tax Data Approach? And the answer is many benefits. including increased efficiencies, reduced internal costs and time, reduced cycle times at interim and year-end processes, improved accuracy and transparency.
Thank you, Chuck. So just to wrap up our Kinetic presentation, let's look at the current situation that we are all in at the moment, which is COVID-19, and how that may impact the Kinetic Tax Data Approach. So Thomson Reuters recently released a 2020 survey of corporate tax departments in which they surveyed over 300 US tax departments, actually. And this included questions on the impact of COVID-19. The key challenges that were identified for these tax departments in the current situation that we're in is, one, tax reform does have a big impact, and I think we'd all agree with that. But very interestingly, two, is the need for new technology and automation, and three, is the need to create efficiencies and process improvements. Next slide, please, Greg. So continuing on with this survey is that the majority of respondents, if we look at the chart on the left-hand side, believe that their tax department will remain, the tax department size, that is, will remain the same going forward. You know, particularly given that budgets and costs are being tightened because of COVID-19 and its impact on business. The survey then discusses what the post-COVID-19 resourcing strategies of US tax departments would be, and that's the chart on the right-hand side. And you can see that, one, the number one resourcing strategy in our current environment is introducing technology and automation. The second one is introducing efficiencies, and you know, to paraphrase to that would be with regards to creating time and cost savings. And this comes before three, which is additional headcount, and four, which means increased reliance on outsourcing or co-sourcing through service providers. So, you know, what this all mean? So quite obviously, in the current environment that we're all in, the use of technology has become increasingly important to create efficiencies and to save costs, okay, and also to allow us to be able to more effectively work in these remote environments, and to be able to access all of the technology and all of the data that we need to do our tax work. So no more than ever has the importance of owning and managing your own tax data and how that affects your internal and external processes and resources been more important than it is now. Thank you, Greg. So I think we're now at the end of our presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you, Claire, for being a part of our presentation. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Chuck, for your wise insight. We trust that all of the attendees enjoyed this session. We hope you enjoy the rest of the Thomson Reuters conference, and should you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to either any of us from KPMG or to Claire from Thomson Reuters to answer your tax data management questions and solutions. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Thank you.